Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired! You know, some owner's going to do that. He's going to say, that guy that disrespects our flag, he's fired. And that owner, they don't know it. They don't know it. They're friends of mine, many of them. They don't know it. They'll be the most popular person for a week. They'll be the most popular person in this country, because that's a total disrespect of our heritage. That's a total disrespect of everything that we stand for, okay? Everything that we stand for. And I know we have freedoms, and we have freedom of choice and many, many different freedoms. But you know what? It's still totally disrespectful.
She give me more. I say she a gold digger. She ain't messing with no broke niggas. I say she a gold digger. She ain't messing with no broke niggas. I say she a gold digger. Umbrella, she's up, whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. Now, I'm sure a lot of people remember the Freddie Gray case in Baltimore, which caused a lot of riots in the city. Well, recently, the Department of Justice decided not to press charges on the police officers. And I don't know what's going on there, because they pressing charges, then they're getting acquitted, now they're not pressing charges. I don't know. But let's actually go back and see what happens to Freddie Gray for ourselves.
Right. Right. His leg look broke. Look at his leg. Look at his leg. That boy leg look broke. Oh my God. His leg broke and y'all dragging him like that.
Don't worry, shorty. We recording this shit. We recording it. Yo, get off me, yo. Tell him get off me. Fuck you twisting his leg like that fool. Shorty, that was after they tased the fuck out of him like that. Man, I've been recording this shit. I've been recording it. I've been recording it. What car they come out of, yo?
He on a bike, yo, right there. Him right there. He on a bike.
I got it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, yo.
Get his badge, man, his chump badge.
After they did tase yo like that, you wonder why he can't use his legs. Yeah, I sure will. I sure will. I sure the fuck will. But that ain't gonna stop me from using this phone.
Now, you can obviously see that these police officers injured him when they were trying to arrest him. It looked like he already suffered this spinal cord injury. It looked like he couldn't even move his legs. It looked like he was paralyzed. But of course, there's always something a nigga did wrong. So let's see what this brother did wrong to deserve this.
2.5 years after this video showing the arrest of Freddie Gray outraged Baltimore, exposed the fractured trust between citizens and police, and set off a series of events that scarred the city forever, the Department of Justice investigation ends, finding, quote, insufficient evidence to support federal criminal civil rights charges against 6 Baltimore police officers. The D.O.J. report starts by outlining legal failures by the city state's attorney's office to convict those officers under Maryland law, then breaks down each fact in the case and why the D.O.J. determined there was not clear proof each officer acted with intent to violate federal laws. Among the findings, a lack of evidence Officer Caesar Goodson intentionally gave Gray a rough ride in the back of a police van, despite largely concluding Gray suffered his fatal injuries when his head forcefully impacted interior surfaces of the wagon. In a statement, the FOP writes, "At no time did we ever believe there was enough evidence that any of the officers violated anyone's civil rights or were guilty of violating any federal laws."
The findings of our comprehensive, thorough, and independent investigation.
The FOP also took another shot at City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby, stating they wish she would have taken more time to conduct a thorough investigation before pursuing charges. Mosby's office responded to the DOJ findings with a reminder of the recently completed internal investigation conducted by outside police agencies, stating, quote, those in the legal community know that federal civil rights violations require a different burden of proof than criminal violations of law. An independent investigation determined that policing protocols were violated by these officers and contributed to the mishandling of Freddie Gray's in-custody death. And disciplinary hearings as the result of that internal investigation are now scheduled for the end of October. At least 3 of the officers could face termination.
So what they're trying to tell us is that the DOJ, who did an investigation on the Baltimore Police Department and found corruption, they found racist bias.
But this report says that the Baltimore Police Department systematically exercised unconstitutional actions toward the people of Baltimore, violating federal law, especially toward the African American community, saying, quote, making unconstitutional stop, arrests, searches, discrimination against African Americans, using excessive force, retaliating against free speech. They also go on to say that when police officers were trained, they were trained with inaccurate law, unconstitutional law, many times, quote, driven by systemic deficiencies in Baltimore Police Department's policies, training, supervision, and accountability, structures that fail to equip officers with the tools they need to protect and police effectively and within the bounds of federal law. Pedestrian stops per 1,000 residents, 2010 to 2015, you see how many more African Americans were stopped rather than the white population. They say there are 2 Baltimores, the white Baltimore and the African American Baltimore, and that African Americans are targeted on stops, searches, and arrests. Quote, 10 people stopped at least 10 times or more. Of those 410 people, 95% were African American. 1 African American man stopped 30 times. He was never criminally charged. And Carol, that was for loitering or trespassing.
Look at this particular case and say, well, we don't see any reason why perhaps this person's civil rights could have been violated. And here we have another black woman who is state attorney in the city of Baltimore who is getting attacked for standing up for our people. And again, like I always say, these are the kind of people who we need to have back, especially other black lawyers and black judges. But us as the whole community need to be having these people back. So even though we have video evidence of what happened, even though the DOJ found evidence for racism in the police departments in Baltimore, it's just not in this particular case. even though in this particular case, the DOJ found multiple instances where the cops were wrong, where the cops did the wrong thing. We just continue to gloss over all the wrong things the cops do, all the infractions that the cops have, because they're no big deal. But they lead to people getting killed. And they're just telling us to our face, even though these cops who are supposed to be the people who uphold the law, break rules, we're not really going to punish them for that. We're not going to do anything for that. We can admit that they broke laws or they broke rules, and there will be no legal action whatsoever, even if you wind up dead. The most that happens is that maybe this particular police department will fire them. And then they'll move a couple of states over, or maybe even a couple counties over, and get hired by another police department. And we have to realize how real it is right now. When they tell you they feel like these are justified murders, they feel like these are justified murders. They're not just saying that to troll you. They feel that way for real. And at the end of the day, in America, nothing is going to help you but yourself. DNA won't help you. Video evidence won't help you. We've been getting video evidence since the 90s, since Rodney King. And it hasn't helped one bit since. Marching in the streets ain't gonna help you. I honor what our ancestors did, but it's 50 years later and we're still talking about police brutality. It's been hundreds of years and we are still begging and pleading for them not to kill us. And when you say that, they call you racist. Because what they hear by you saying, please don't kill us, is you saying kill all whites. That's what they're hearing. Now, until we realize that whatever our beliefs are, it really doesn't matter. Until we put them to the side and come together and actually just start protecting ourselves, because we have no choice. We never really had a choice. And our ancestors had a lot more togetherness. There was more of a family structure. They were able to build an economy when they had the chance, because they had to rely on each other. My grandmother was born in 1921. My grandmother was born in 1921 in Emporia, Virginia. And she was only really able to go to school until the 5th grade because it was very, very hard to go to school back then. But she was still able to create a stable home and a stable family, and was able to go out and work and earn money because black people had to stick together. They had to hire other black people. They had to go shop at other black places. They had no other choice. But she used to tell me stories about how every day she would come home from school and some white boys would chase her. Now, when I was young hearing the story, I'm thinking, oh, it's just some boys chasing some girls. It's just harmless. But when you get older and realize that this was the 1920s and the 1930s in Emporia, Virginia, these white boys was chasing her for her life. It's 2017. What I look like telling my grandkids when I'm an old man that, oh, every time I get pulled over, I had to worry about some cop killing me. Or teaching him about driving while black, or walking while black, or interacting with the police at all. It's our generation's responsibility to take the next steps for which our ancestors have laid out for us, to put the next generation in a position to empower themselves. And we see the same thing over and over and over, and we still asking and hoping and surprised when we don't get justice. Of course not. America was not built on justice for black people. It was literally built off torture and exploitation of black people. What do you think is going to change? We have to come together to build our own shit and be able to protect ourselves. We still praying for justice for one or two of our brothers. We shouldn't be taking no losses. We shouldn't be letting our people get killed in the first place. We have to start protecting ourselves. protecting our children, and we have to put our differences to the side, or the same thing is going to happen over and over and over for another 100 years.
The police commissioner today called their investigation massive, saying more than 30 investigators are looking into Freddie Gray's death.
And he also said that Freddie Gray should have had medical attention at the very spot that he was arrested. We have live team coverage tonight, including more on the national rally planned for tomorrow. But we begin with 11 News reporter George Lettis, who's live at City Police Headquarters downtown. George.
Well, Donna and Stan, about 2 hours ago, City Police released about a dozen video clips from what the city's camera surveillance system picked up the morning Freddie Gray was arrested and then injured. That, along with a press conference from police today, is giving us a better vantage point of this timeline. At 8:39 a.m. April 12th, a city street camera shows a man running, and then two officers get on their bikes to go after him. By 8:42, the wagon shows up and police put Freddie Gray in, which brings us to mistake number one admitted by Police Commissioner Anthony Batts Friday afternoon.
We know our police employees failed to get him medical attention in a timely manner multiple times.
Shortly before Freddie Gray is put in the wagon the first time, he requested an inhaler.
And quite frankly, that's exactly where Freddie Gray should have received medical attention, and he did not.
Mistake number two.
We know he was not buckled in the transportation wagon, as he should have been. No excuses for that, period.
His hands were cuffed at the first stop. Leg irons were put on him at the second stop, leaving a hog-tied Gray in the wagon without a seatbelt. Here's street camera footage of the wagon leaving the second stop at 8:54. The wagon then makes stop number 3 at Druid Hill Avenue and Dolphin Street, where police indicate Gray was responsive. There's no city camera footage of this stop.
The transport wagon stops again for a second time at Druid Hill and Dolphin to deal with Mr. Gray, and the facts of that interaction are under investigation.
We have another officer that comes up to witness Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray is talking there. They pick him up off the floor and place him on the seat at that time. He says he needs a medic.
But a medic was never called.
And I'm not going to give you all our information. There's a incident, or not an incident, because I'll get you off on the right path. There's something that we have to look at, that we have to have further investigation on.
The wagon stops a fourth time to pick up another suspect at Pennsylvania and North Avenues. The paramedics are then called once the wagon arrives at the Western District. The call was made at 9:26 a.m. Gray was unresponsive at that point, but according to new information from the 11 News I-team, the medic call was mistakenly for a broken arm. The medic unit arrived at the Western District at 9:33 without the fire engine and extra manpower usually dispatched with a more serious call. After backup arrived, Gray was on his way to shock trauma at 9:54 with a pulse, sources say. He died a week later.
A scathing new report out tonight from the Justice Department says police in Baltimore have lost the trust of the community, and they say it's because of a history of racial discrimination and how the law is enforced. The city is now responding, and our justice correspondent Pete Williams has details.
Launched in the aftermath of community outrage over Freddie Gray's death in police custody, the civil rights investigation found that officers in the Baltimore Police Department, BPD, routinely stop, search, and arrest African-American residents for no good reason.
These violations have deeply eroded the mutual trust between BPD and the community it serves. Trust that is essential to effective policing as well as to officer and public safety.
Over the past 5 years, police have stopped over 300,000 pedestrians in African-American neighborhoods on little or no suspicion of lawbreaking, often frisking them, even strip searching some in public. One man in his mid-50s was stopped 30 times but never given so much as a ticket. This man says he tried hard to avoid interacting with police.
But despite that, had at least a couple dozen instances with law enforcement that I'm pretty sure were just predicated on the fact that, I'm a young black man.
And the report says police too often resort to excessive force, even when there's no danger to officers or others. The mayor, who asked for the civil rights investigation, says it will help lead to reforms.
I believe transparency is the only true foundation upon which we can rebuild community trust.
City officials say it could cost up to $10 million a year to change the way police are trained, equipped, and supervised, but they say they are willing to make the changes this blistering report calls for.
Again, come! Get him!
Yo, get that dog off of him. Roll over, Papa. Just roll over. Let him handcuff you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Get that dog off of there. Get that dog off of him.
Roll over now. Roll over.
He's knocked out.
I got all of this. I got all of this.
Yo, he's knocked out.
On camera.
He's knocked out. He's not even moving. He's not. Get that dog off of him. Back off a little.
Roll over. Put your head back now. Do it now. Out.
Roll him over. He can't move. He's out. He's knocked out. Sí. That's what you said.
I got it all on camera.
I feel so bad for him, yo, for real.
They punched him, stomped him, kicked him, and then they let the dog out of the car, and the dog bit him in his face and around his body.
These are the final moments before 32-year-old Philip White's death this past Tuesday. A family friend released this video to NBC 10 News just a short time ago. It gives a clear picture of how violent police officers handled White as he laid on the ground. Melita Sims says she grew up with White and is shocked by his death.
He was a caring person. He always was the type to be there to, to protect you.
We asked Violent Police and Cumberland prosecutors to comment about this new video. No one responded on a day when many offices are closed for Good Friday. But a top-ranking law enforcement official and former use of force instructor who is not connected to the case did comment. I asked a 30-plus-year veteran for his observations. Speaking on anonymity, he tells us police appear to have White under control and should have called off the dog immediately. But he says he was most disturbed when he saw one officer do this.
You see what happened here? All of it? All right, I need your information. I'm going to take your phone.
Our law enforcement expert says that demand was inappropriate and police have no right to take anyone's cell phone because they are recording uniformed police officers making an arrest.
My professional role in this matter is plain: to seek justice on behalf of an innocent 25-year-old man who was unreasonably taken into custody after fleeing in his neighborhood, which just happens to be a high-crime neighborhood, and had his spine partially severed in the back of a Baltimore police wagon. For those that believe that I'm anti-police, it's simply not the case. I'm anti-police brutality, and I need not remind you that the only loss and the greatest loss in all of this was that of Freddie Gray's life. We do not believe that Freddie Gray killed himself. We stand by the medical examiner's determination that Freddie Gray's death was a homicide. However, after much thought and prayer, it has become clear to me that without being able to work with an independent investigatory agency from the very start, without having a say in the election of whether our cases proceed in front of a judge or a jury, without communal oversight of policing in this community, without real substantive reforms to the current criminal justice system, we could try this case 100 times and cases just like it, and we would still end up with the same result. Accordingly, I have decided not to proceed on the cases against Officer Garrett, Sergeant Alicia White, or to relitigate the case against William Porter. What I've learned through this experience is that every battle, every hurdle, every obstacle that we've overcome since the pursuit of these cases has brought us one step closer to equality, and that any and every step towards equality in our justice system is well worth fighting for. This system is in need of reform, and when it comes to police accountability, and as long as I'm the chief prosecutor for this city, I vow to you that my office and I will fight. We will fight for a fair and equitable justice system for all, so that whatever happened to Freddie Gray never happens to another person in this community again. Thank you.